Okay, so as I said, I am a part-time communications coordinator for League of Women Voters of Iowa, and also have a consulting business, and have been doing work with social media for since about 2006, so about 14 years now, and a lot has changed in that time. And so this is a beginner's workshop. My goal tonight is to get you comfortable with setting up an account on Twitter and tweeting on Twitter. And we'll go through all of the lingo and that type of stuff. So if we get into questions and some things are a little bit beyond what we discussed, that is fine. Just want you to take away the pieces that I give you here, and you can always build upon that later. I'll give you my contact information. You do all have my email address. So if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to ask if they don't get answered during this presentation. So we are going to talk about why you should be on Twitter. We'll talk about the Twitter language, which might be one of the more prevalent things why people are hesitant to be on Twitter, because it kind of has its own language sometimes. We'll talk about account setup, what to tweet, when to tweet, how to tweet, and then how you measure success. And as we talk about this, we'll be talking about how it can apply to you individually and to any organizations you're involved in, whether that's League or any other advocacy organizations that you are involved with. So why Twitter? I put some of this in the newsletter that was sent out, the voter, and then in the blast email last week. But just to review a few things, it's an easy way to share information with people inside and outside of your organization. You just have to learn the tricks to it. I think it is faster and more efficient than Facebook, because Facebook has all kinds of features. Twitter, you're just literally tweeting a message, replying and sharing what other people tweet, and that's it. You're also limited to 280 characters. When Twitter started, it limited people to 140 characters. So they have doubled that. I think over time they realized they needed to give us a little more room. But it's really meant to be short and concise. And of course, you can include links and photos, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You can connect directly with influencers. You know, our current president tweets a lot, maybe rather infamously. But the reality is more and more people in power and celebrities and those types of people are on Twitter and tweeting themselves. Now, some people have others who tweet for them, but you know, where else can you talk directly with someone or have someone respond to your tweet or share your tweet or anything like that? It's really unique in that aspect. You can communicate in real time. So you put it out on Twitter, it's there right away, which is why a lot of important and powerful people like to use Twitter. It's a content source. So while we want to put out our information, we can also get and obtain information from Twitter. You can follow accounts that are like-minded or that are interested in your interests, whether it's gardening or advocacy or dogs or whatever. So it's really a neat source to find information. And we'll talk about a little bit later on how you can verify to make sure that's a legitimate source that you're following. And then media views. So journalists love Twitter and they look at Twitter repeatedly. I, having been involved in politics and nonprofits for the past several years, have been in front-facing positions with organizations, and I've had multiple journalists reach out to me via Twitter about getting an interview, because it's just a lot faster than trying to look up someone's phone number, and then they direct message me on Twitter and they can get that right on Twitter. In fact, I just had a reporter last week reach out to me that way. So you talk about direct contact, there it is. So moving on to Twitter language, it's really pretty simple. There's just a few keywords that once you learn what they mean, then it all starts to make a little more sense. So a tweet you can think of as a post or something you're putting out there. On Facebook, it's called a post. On Instagram, it's called a post. In Twitter, it's called a tweet. Much like with posts on Facebook, you can share things, you can like things, you can comment. And so on Twitter, there's a heart button for liking it. There's not all of the emoticons that you have on Facebook. It's very simple, just a heart if you like it. There's a button so you can retweet it, which is like when you share it on Facebook. And when you retweet it, you can just share it as it is, or you can add your own comments, just like you do on Facebook. And then there's a reply feature, which is a reply that attaches itself to someone's tweet, and they can see it's basically commentary or a conversation. And so underneath each tweet, which I will show you, I'll have some screenshots here in a minute. I won't make you look at blank pages with words the whole night. But I will show you where those buttons are on tweets. And those are very easy to click on and do those things. Then we have what's called a thread. As I mentioned before, Twitter is limited to 280 characters. And sometimes there's a longer message that people want to send. So you can do that in what's called a thread. So you put out your initial tweet, and then you just keep replying to your own tweets so they're all connected with the continued message. Now, I would warn only to do this if the message is really important and you really feel the need to put it all right into your tweet. If it's a press release or something like that, you can have a link for it. An example of a thread that I've seen recently is, maybe it's a protester talking about an interaction they just had with a police officer or with someone else while on the ground at a protest. So they might say, this happened, then this happened, then the next thing happened, and put that all in a thread, because obviously they're, marching at a protest and they're not going to be putting it on a website or anything like that. It's going to be kind of a quick and dirty reporting of things. And then DM stands for direct message. And a direct message is a private message between you and one other person. Very similar to Facebook Messenger. You can write back and forth. You are limited to characters in that too. And I would just caution anyone, while that is a private message, like with anything electronic, whether it's email or anything else, anyone can take a screenshot of that or forward it to someone. So just be mindful when you're sending things via direct message that it could be publicly consumed at some point if somebody passes that on. But it's really just a message between you and one other person, and hopefully that's someone you trust anyway. Then we have handles. And this, I feel, is one of the most intimidating features of Twitter. I know when I started tweeting, it just seemed weird. So handles are when you see @ and somebody's name or a title. And that is really the account name, the username, so to speak, for Twitter. And so when you refer to people or organizations on Twitter, you want to use their handles that has their @ and whatever their name is on Twitter. And we'll explore that a little bit more too. And then finally, trending. We see this on the news. I think it's the Today Show every morning talks about, trending topics. And what that basically is are the things that people are talking about the most on Twitter. So Twitter has a search bar, and you can search any word you want, and it'll pull up all of the tweets of people talking about it. And a familiar thing that you might have heard with trending is a hashtag. So a hashtag is a way to identify keywords. And we'll go into that more later. Hashtag is also referred to as the pound sign, which I remember when it was called the pound sign back when we had, landline phones everywhere. So that's what it looks like. A hashtag is essentially a pound sign. Now they call it a hashtag with Twitter speak. So then we'll move along to account setup. So you go to twitter.com and you'll click the sign up button if you don't have an account to log in. And this is what will pop up on your screen the first thing. So it's pretty basic. You can put in your name, and later on you'll create your handle and all of that stuff. So you put in your name and then either your phone or your email. And you'll want to have your phone or email access close by depending on what you choose, because Twitter will send you either a text message or an email to verify that it's you, and you'll have to click on that and verify to finish setting up your account after you hit the next button. And then the date of birth, that is not public. They're just doing all they can to ensure that real people are signing up for Twitter. So don't get scared by that date of birth. And then after you do this initial screen and verify your account, you're going to choose your handle. And when you choose your handle, it's a limited number of characters. You can do uppercase and lowercase. It really doesn't matter how people enter it in. It's all going to equate to the same thing. So if somebody else has my handle, but they have a capital letter in it and I don't, it still counts as the same thing. So if someone else has a name that you want, you cannot use it. So for me, my name is pretty unique, Melissa Giesing, at least in the United States. Maybe other countries where my ancestors are from, there's another Melissa Giesing. But for me, I was able to do Melissa Giesing. Now, if that was already taken, I might do Melissa Giesing 1 or use a nickname or something like that. Whatever you choose, you want to make sure it reflects you. It's simple, people can find you. For League of Women Voters, interesting thing, I set up the Twitter account in April, and we use LWVIA for virtually everything, our website, our Facebook, but that was already taken on Twitter. So I had to come up with the next best thing. So I did LWV IOWA, so LWV Iowa. So do know that sometimes the name you want will be taken. There's ways to work around that down the road to, brand yourself. And also remember that you can change your handle once you set it up. If you do change it, I'd recommend to do it early on before your account is well established, because people may be confused about who you are, or if they have a tweet that uses your old handle and someone clicks on it, it won't necessarily connect to your account. So you can play around with the handle, different words, but like I said, it's pretty limited. You can't have spaces or characters. It has to be letters and numbers, and no one else can have the same handle as you. So then you're gonna put on your profile picture, a header picture, a little about yourself, a lot of similarities with Facebook. And when you go to look at your settings, I encourage you to keep your account public. If you make all of your tweets private, it's really going to limit what you can do. And Twitter is a unique platform in that it's meant to be public. So with Facebook, that's a little more intimate. It's a little more complex system. My privacy settings are set pretty tightly on Facebook. However, with Twitter, the point of Twitter is to get the word out and to network and spread the word far and wide. So if you lock your account, the only people who can see your tweets are those who follow you. If I want someone famous, let's say I want a state legislator even to see our League of Women Voters of Iowa tweet. If I have a private account and let's say Therese retweets the tweet that I put out, she retweets it. Oh, I think someone's off of mute. If she retweets it, only the people who follow me can see that tweet. And so maybe her state legislator follows her, but they don't follow me. And so they won't see that even if she retweets it. So I say make it public. You can always block individuals one-on-one. I've been on Twitter since 2009 personally, and I think I've only had to block a handful of people during that time. And it's a very simple click the block button. That's it. And you can always unblock them later if you wish. And then the next step is to watch and tweet. So start looking at other Twitter accounts, play around with it a little bit, put out a couple of your own tweets. And then after you've done all that, you can go back and start following other accounts. Now, Twitter will prompt you to do this early in the setup process, and I recommend skipping that part until you have your whole account set up, because when you follow someone, they get a notice that you're following them, and a lot of times they'll go to your Twitter page and see who you are. And if you don't have anything up there, they might think you're a robot or say, okay, whatever, but they're not going to follow you. So make sure your account's completely set up before you start following people. It'll just make it more likely that people will follow you back. And so these are two different account profiles. Neither one of them perfect, neither one of them outrageous. Just a couple of examples here. So for mine, for my individual account, I have a header and I have a photo. And you know, with your header, sometimes it'll cover up part of it. But if someone taps on your header, like on Facebook, they can see the whole thing if they can't figure it out. So I have my header photo, my profile photo. You can see there's a button, you can follow me. And so all you have to do is click that and you're following me, and my tweets show up in your feed when you log in, just like a Facebook feed kind of, only it's a little faster and a little simpler. And then you'll see my regular name, and then my handle is right below it. So my handle is @MelissaGiesing, all lowercase. I could have capitalized a couple letters. It doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. And then in my bio, I really try to brand myself and what I'm tweeting about. So you can include other handles and hashtags in your bio if you want. So I have a Twitter account for my business, but it doesn't have a lot of tweets because I'm busy doing all of the other work, all the paying work, so to speak. But I do have a Twitter account for my business, so I put that in there so people, when they click on that, it takes them straight to my business Twitter. And then I basically tell a little bit about me. So this basically says what you're gonna see on my Twitter. I tweet a lot about my dogs, about my nephew and nieces, that type of thing. So this just shows you can make it super professional and only tweet about certain things, or you can make it more personalized. And then I put my location in Des Moines. Now, if you live in a smaller town and you're a little worried about privacy, you know, if you live within an hour of Des Moines, you know, in a smaller town, you can just put Des Moines if you want. I do recommend putting in a location because that can be helpful down the road if you're trying to connect with people, or, you know, if you're politically involved. A lot of people are interested in what's happening in Iowa, that type of thing. And then I have a website. So for a personal Twitter account, if you don't necessarily have a blog like I do, you can put in a website of an organization you're involved with. You could link it to your Facebook. You could link it to, you know, an organization, anything like that. And then if you look at the League of Women Voters of Iowa, that I have just a standard blue background. I am collating some stuff to make a professional looking banner there, but I just wanted it super simple and clean to start out with. So when people see us, it's easily identifiable that we are branded and this is who we are. So I'll add a different header photo, and you can switch out your photos as often as you want. Just make sure it's not confusing, you know, who you are. And then you'll see our handle is LWV Iowa because LWVIA was taken. And then I put our mission in there: empowering voters, defending democracy. We believe in the power of women to create a more perfect democracy. And then for location, I put Iowa because we are statewide, and I put our website. And so we do not have nearly as many followers as I have, but we've only been on for a few months. And, you know, with followers, it's sometimes a slow burn. You can go along and not get many, and then if you put out a tweet that a lot of people are looking at, then suddenly people start following you. So it's just one of those things. You just have to consistently tweet and be patient with it. Okay, so what to tweet, right? You've got your Twitter set up. What on earth do you tweet about? First of all, you want to tie everything to your brand or mission if you're doing this for an organization. And even as an individual, you know, just be aware of what you're putting out there, because people really tie that back to who you are. Content-rich items. So what I mean by that is you don't want to just post text and words. You want to attach a photo or a video or a link. And when you tweet, it's just like on Facebook at the bottom, you can add a photo, a video, or a link. And when you do that, it just catches people's eye a lot more. And you can tweet about meetings and events. And even in the age of Zoom, you can still tweet about your meetings and events, because this tweet at the right was when Bonnie Pitts issued our Defending Democracy Award, presented that to Jason Clayworth. Now, if you were clicking on the actual tweet, you would see a fuller picture. This is just the condensed version, but I did take, you know, a picture of her whole face and his whole face too. But I basically attached 2 photos and then a screenshot of our press release along with the tweet. And Twitter will let you attach 4 images at a time. There's a limit on the video length. So once again, it's keeping it very compact. And like I said, there's a press release on this. You can also tweet articles mentioning or aligning with your organization, inspirational quotes, retweets with unique insights. So by that, I mean, you know, you can click the button. If you see at the bottom of this tweet, there's a little thought bubble. You would tap that to reply. There's the arrows, that's your retweet button. There's the heart, and that's the like button. And then the other one is to forward that in a direct message. So if I wanted to retweet it, I would literally just need to click that retweet button and then verify retweet. Now, after I click that retweet button, it's going to ask me if I want to comment or just retweet. And I suggest adding a comment to make it unique and to give yourself some visibility. Because if you comment, then your logo and comments are listed above it when it shows up in someone's feed.
Repeat those symbols, would you please?
Yeah.
Repeat those symbols.
Yes. So the left one is to reply or comment, same thing on Twitter, that bubble. The arrows are to retweet. The heart is to like the tweet. And the far right one you'll rarely use. I never forward it in a message other than on Twitter, but that's just to forward it in a direct message or in another way using another app. So when you hit that retweet button, you can just go ahead and tweet it as is, or you can add your own commentary. And if you just tweet it as it is, it's literally going to be the same thing retweeted, and it'll say in really light gray letters at the top, you know, Melissa Giesing retweeted this, rather than having my image and my header and my commentary on it. But some things you don't have anything to add to. So if you just want to simply retweet it, you just simply retweet it. Another thing to call out about this tweet is you'll see that I use the handles for Des Moines Register and Jason Clayworth. And when you use someone's handle in your tweet, they get a notification that you mention them. So that helps you gain hopefully retweets or likes or followers or all of the above. And then I have hashtags. So those are those trending words. And to find someone's handle or to find what you want to use as a hashtag, there's a search bar at the top of Twitter. So you can search for people, you can search words. So, you know, voting rights, if I've never used that before, maybe I want to look that up and see what's being tweeted about that. Because sometimes there'll be a phrase, I consider myself pretty young, I'm 41, but there's things that 20-year-olds are saying that I have no clue. And you might think a phrase means one thing, and if you look it up on Twitter, you're like, oh no, that's attached to something I don't want to be a part of. So some are pretty, you know, simple, like vote, you know, that's what it means. But if you're using clever phrases, that type of thing, do search it in the search bar to see what people are using it for. And you don't have to use hashtags every time you tweet. You know, you'll kind of add these things in the more you do it and the more familiar you get with it. Okay, so when to tweet, and this can be a tough thing for volunteers because really on Twitter, you need to tweet every day. And if not every day, close to every day, even if you're retweeting something else that someone tweeted, just to stay visible. You want to do it at various times of the day, and you want to respond to messages and comments within just a few hours at most. And the reason I create such a sense of urgency with this is because Twitter is very rapid fire. I can pull up my Twitter account, and within 10 seconds, I have to hit refresh because there's a new tweet. Now I follow a bunch of different accounts, but it just goes to show it's a lot faster moving than Facebook is. It's really rapid fire. This is another tweet. On the left, we talked about how Linn County registered voters. And this is something too, when you tweet, yes, it's in real time, but even if you don't tweet right when it happens, it's okay. This one, we received the photos later that day, and then we had a bunch of stuff. Legislature was in session, so we were tweeting about felon voting rights and all of this, you know, crazy late night legislation, all of that stuff. So this, we didn't even post till a week or two later, but we still tweeted it because it was relevant information. And I would like to think it helped the league in that area get exposure a little longer if they had already posted it on their own social media earlier. Okay, so now we're down to how to tweet. You want to assign someone trustworthy who understands your organization. Of course, if it's your own account, obviously you're gonna tweet for yourself. And a big thing to remember when tweeting for an organization versus yourself is to speak in the appropriate voice. Because if you don't do that, people wonder, did they post this accidentally thinking they were, you know, on a personal account? So what that means is when I talk about League of Women Voters, I don't say, I talked to the governor today and she said she's not going to sign this and I think that's wrong and blah, blah, blah. Don't use the word I. You want to use the word we. So we have members speaking with the governor and we encourage her to move forward and sign this legislation, that type of thing. An exception would be, you know, if I want to tweet a profound statement from our state president, Therese, I could put in quotes, you know, her comment, and then at the end, you know, dash Therese Grant, so they know it's in her voice. So that's just one key thing I see a lot. And, you know, we're working with volunteers and we all do the best we can. So I don't want to be overly critical, but make sure, you know, if you're posting for your organization, it's not in the first person, it's collective, representing the whole. And that just brings a little more professionalism to it too. And you have to remember, people might look at your account who have no idea who you are. And so it can be confusing. They don't know that it's Melissa tweeting that. They just say, you know, League of Women Voters of Iowa. And why would she say I? Who is this person? Then building a content calendar. And this, I'm not a huge stickler for. I put this down because it's good to have an idea of things you want to tweet. So you have to be nimble. That's part of Twitter. Part of what we do, being advocates for issues, is, you know, responding to the last minute news and being flexible. However, it's good to have an idea of things you want to tweet. So if you want to feature a member of League each week, or if you want to retweet something from the state each week, or put up a motivational quote on Mondays, that type of thing. So it's more just thinking of things that you can be putting up there. And I don't necessarily put things into a calendar just because things change so quickly, but I keep an ongoing list of ideas, or if I have, 5 things today that I think I want to tweet about, some of them don't necessarily need to go out today. So I might save a couple in my back pocket for a day when not much is going on, and then I have some content to put up. So that's really what the calendar means. And once again, I'll say you want to make that content rich with a photo, video, or link, as well as handles if you're mentioning someone, and hashtags. And for those handles, you can look people up on Twitter. And of course, you want to follow them, click that follow button at the top. And then when you start typing in @ and start typing their name, it'll automatically pop up as you type. So it gets easier to use handles the more people you follow and the more you do that. The first few times it can be a little tricky. My rule of thumb is do not link your other social media accounts to Twitter. So what I mean by this is you can go into your Facebook settings or your Instagram settings and set it so when you post there, it automatically posts to your other social media. You have to give them your username and password to your other social media accounts. But the thing is, you can have this beautiful Facebook post with, this well-written paragraph, beautiful photos, that type of thing. When that gets sent off to Twitter by Facebook, all it sends are the first few words and then a link. None of that photo or all of that text, none of that translates over. It's really just a few words and check it out on Facebook. And if you're constantly doing that, when people look at your tweets, it's not very interested and people aren't going to tune in. So it takes a little more time, but if you're posting to multiple social media channels, just, you can copy and paste the text, paste it into Twitter, link the photos again to Twitter, just do it again. And you probably want to vary what you're saying a little bit between Facebook and Twitter anyway. I lots of times will make the statements a little more brief when I'm on Twitter, just because people don't want to read a whole paragraph. So you might see a post from League on Facebook that's twice as long as the one on Twitter. And I just do that for the audience because people don't want to read all that much on Twitter. Or you can link, put a link to the website or that type of thing if you want to give them more to read. But I would not automatically link your social media accounts. Most people aren't familiar anymore with how to do that anyway, but if you're managing multiple accounts, those questions come up, and I just say, yes, it's a little more work, but you'll get better results if you post individually yourself. And then we want League members to be retweeting on our personal Twitter accounts when state league or local leagues tweet something. So that's a key, and that's how we get things to really gain fire and to spread the word out there. And so here are a couple more tweets, and I'm getting very close to the end, so we'll have some time for questions. On the left was from League of Women Voters of Iowa, July 6th, the first day to request an absentee ballot. You'll notice near the end of the tweet, there's the sos.iowa.gov link, and it's shortened. Now you can still click on it, the link is good, but Twitter will sometimes shorten a link just so you don't see all of that stuff up there. But the link is good and still clickable. Now, when you put a link in, sometimes an automatic image will pop up, or a gray thing will pop up with no image and kind of have a thumbnail. For the Secretary of State's website, sometimes a random photo will pop up that I don't necessarily want attached to the tweet. Paul Pate's a great guy, but I don't want his photo on all of my tweets with the Secretary of State website. So what you can do is if you find that, you can delete the link, attach a photo, and then put that text on there. So sometimes you'll start a tweet and you'll say, wait, I've got to delete this and start over. So in order to get your own photo on there, you have to attach that first before you type in the website. Otherwise, the website's automatically going to put its thumbnail on there. But this tweet is our best tweet to date. We had 1 reply, you can see below there, 64 retweets, and 69 likes, which is really good for us. I was looking at National League's Twitter, and their best tweets are just over 100 retweets and likes. So I feel like we're doing pretty good just for the state of Iowa. And it was really interesting to see who retweeted that. So we had several elected officials, but then even people in other states, just knowing that Iowa is such an important state. So that's really neat. And then one more I'll show you on the right here is by the 19th Amendment Centennial Commemoration Committee, their hard won not done Twitter. And you'll see they have the number 1 at the end of their handle because that was one that had been taken when they set it up. And when I say to retweet with, you know, some sort of value or commentary, this is what I'm talking about. So we have the commentary at the top. We use the author's handle because she spoke at one of the events. We mentioned Iowa State and used our own hashtag with it. So this is where we're sharing it, but we're adding our own 2 cents. And then the author ended up liking it and following us too. So that's where you gain some visibility. And then finally, how do you measure success? So obviously there's followers, but I don't put too much weight on followers because, you know, like I said, it's a slow burn sometime. Really focus on the retweets and the likes, because if those things are happening, that's going to get you more followers. And it's really just consistently putting out information. If you're not tweeting, nobody can retweet or like you. And sometimes you're surprised, like that one with the vote by mail, like that astounded me. I thought I've tweeted so many greater things than that, but that one caught on. And a lot of times it's the topic too, or the hashtags. You know, I used voting rights, and that's been a big hashtag lately. So you just never know. And then the ultimate measure of success for me is when strangers are retweeting your content, when someone likes it and retweets it and you have no idea who they are, and that can be a good thing. And I did talk about, say that I would mention briefly about how to verify if someone's a real person. When somebody follows you or retweets or likes you, if you look at their account and they don't have a bio, or their pictures are stock photos, meaning it's not even a person as a profile picture, or they're tweeting all about one topic, those are probably robots. And so you just don't need to follow them. And if they're, you know, harassing you, you just block them. So Twitter and Facebook are cracking down more now, obviously since 2016. But you'll see weird accounts like that out there, and they're usually pretty harmless or trying to get followers, and so you can just ignore them. Okay, so that concludes this part of the presentation, and I appreciate you all bearing with me here. These are, before I click off of this so I can look at all of your faces again, these are our handles. So we have the one I really want you to follow when you all get on Twitter is LWV Iowa, because that's our state league Twitter account.